Konnichiwa, Dr. Braces here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today, we're going to talk about the ultimate dilemma, flossing with braces. My name is Dr. Okuda, and I check hundreds of patients every week with braces to make sure that they're doing a good job brushing and flossing and taking care of their teeth. We're going to talk about the two methods that you can use to floss while you have braces. Number one is with a water pick or a water flosser. And number two is using traditional floss. And we'll talk about the advantages and disadvantages of each one and which type I recommend for my patients. So the first technique we're going to discuss is using what's called a water flosser. A water flosser is a machine that generates water and it pumps water through this little tube into your gums and around the braces. That water is going to flush out the plaque and bacteria. Now, my patients that have water flossers and actually use them, when they come visit me for their routine appointments, their gums always look so much better than a patient that doesn't. The reason why is when we use this water flosser, how it works is you're walking that water flosser along the gum line, and as that water pulses and shoots water into the gums, it's flushing out bacteria, keeping it healthy under the gums. And so it's very effective in terms of keeping the teeth clean and cleaning around the braces. There's special tips that you can buy for water flossers specifically for braces, and that's why it's so effective at cleaning around the brackets and keeping the teeth clean. One of the major advantages of the water flosser is it's very easy to use. It's not very technique sensitive. So if you have dexterity problems and you're having a hard time working the floss under the wire, which we'll go over next in the more traditional flossing method, then a water flosser is a great option for you. When you have braces, it's much easier to use. When you use traditional floss, you have to work that floss under the wire, and I'll show you how that works in a second, but it takes a lot of time. And for me to expect young teenagers or even adults to take 10 minutes, working that floss around the wire is a little bit unrealistic maybe. So that's why my patients with water flossers tend to do a lot better in terms of keeping their teeth clean and their gums healthy. So what are the cons of a water flosser? Number one is it's big. This is my actual water flosser that I use at my house. I love it, but it does take up a lot of counter space. So if you don't have a lot of counter space in your bathroom, that's going to make it a little bit challenging to have a water flosser as opposed to traditional floss, which doesn't take up hardly any room at all. Another disadvantage of the water flosser is the initial cost. It's going to cost more than regular floss. But again, I think it's worth the investment because it's helping you reduce the amount of white spots on your teeth, the amount of potential cavities once braces come off. So the initial investment to me is worth it because it saves you money in the long run. One more disadvantage of the water flosser is, as we've discussed how it works, it's going to pulse and shoot water around the braces and under the gums. The one thing that it will not do is get rid of plaque and bacteria on the tight contact points of our teeth. And so where do cavities form usually? It's where we chew, because we have all these little grooves in our teeth where bacteria can get stuck in there, or it's where the teeth touch on the sides, the contact points of the teeth. And so one of the major reasons why we floss with regular floss is to scrape between those teeth and clear out any plaque or bacteria that's stuck there. The water flosser does not effectively get rid of those tight contact points, plaque and bacteria. So that's one area where the water flosser is, in my opinion, inferior to traditional floss. So next we are going to talk about traditional floss with braces. I think this is a very effective way to clean under the gums between the teeth and clean between those contact points where the teeth are touching, right? One thing that you have to do with floss and braces is a traditional floss isn't usually going to be very easy to work under the wire. This is what I call superfloss. This is what we use in our office. It's just waxed at the edge, so it makes the floss more firm or rigid at the edge. That way it's easier to work that floss under the wire. So how that works is you work the floss under the wire, and then you floss between the teeth, and then you have to take it out, and you go to the next spot, and you work the floss under the wire, and then you floss between the teeth. So all in all, when you do the top and bottom, it's about a 5 to 10 minute process. And again, that's one of the cons with traditional floss and braces, is that I don't think most people, even without braces, floss, right? So to expect them to spend the extra 5 minutes a day flossing, I would love for them to do it, but realistically, are they going to? Probably not. And so that's one of the disadvantages of traditional floss with braces, is it's just going to take a long time and it requires a lot of dexterity. The advantage of traditional floss, kind of like we already discussed, is it's going to do a much better job of cleaning between the teeth, where a water flosser won't do that. Another disadvantage, though, is when you do the traditional floss, unlike with the water flosser that's going to clean all the way around the gums in the front of the tooth and in the back of the tooth, the traditional floss is only going to get under the gums right between the teeth. Right, so those are the only two areas under the gums that it cleans. A very good, important tool to use, absolutely. Just more challenging to use, more time consuming, doesn't clean all the way around the gums like a water flosser would, but cleans between the teeth better. It's even more important to floss with braces because there's so much more potential for plaque and food and bacteria to get trapped with the braces because there's hardware in there, so it's harder to keep clean. So what's the verdict? Which should you use when you have braces?
Well, it's both, actually.
And the answer is both. You should use both water flosser and traditional floss. The water flosser is going to be much more effective at cleaning around the brackets in addition to your toothbrush. Nothing replaces a toothbrush. Let me just make sure I state that. Nothing replaces the toothbrush. The toothbrush is the most important thing. Flossing you do every day as well. So water flosser and regular floss, using those in correlation with each other is going to be what keeps your teeth the cleanest, the healthiest, and helps you avoid cavities and plaque around the teeth and those big puffy gums that come along with not having good oral hygiene. How often should we use each one? I recommend using the water flosser daily. I recommend using traditional floss daily. Is that going to happen? I certainly hope so. But as long as you're doing one of those two things every day, you should be able to be maintaining the hygiene that's required to have good, healthy teeth when the braces come off. At least floss a couple times a week, as in traditional floss, 1 to 2 times a week at a minimum. Hygiene is one of the most important things that you can do while you have braces. And so make sure you're taking care of those teeth, keeping them clean, and using that water flosser and traditional floss, at least one of those two every day. So to summarize, we have water flossers, we have traditional floss. Both are great tools to use to keep your teeth clean. Which one's best for you? It's the one that you're going to actually use. So keep that in mind. If you found this video helpful, thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe for more braces tips. If you want to know how can we tell if you are not brushing your teeth, click on this link here and let us know in the comments, are you a water flosser or a floss threader, string flosser type of person? And we look forward to seeing you next time. Remember, smiles change lives, so keep smiling.